Hello guys, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Mountaineering podcast. Now this podcast is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming mountaineering adventure. Once a week, I'm going to be sharing with you in-depth and evidence-backed information around improving your physical performance on the mountain, reducing your likelihood of pain and injury, nutrition for mountaineers, and even a bit of mental strength development, so you can be empowered in your training to give yourself the very best chance of a safe, enjoyable, and successful mountaineering adventure. So now that you know what you're in for, let's get into today's episode. Alright, hello guys. Today we are talking all about muscular endurance training for mountaineers, and specifically what the 7 rules you need to follow to get the most out of this type of training. Now, muscular endurance is one of the most important aspects of fitness for a mountaineer to develop. Defined as the ability for the muscles to produce a relatively high force output for an extended period of time, it is obviously super relevant for mountaineers out there. And in simple terms, it's the ability of your legs just to go and go and go and go while carrying a heavy pack when going uphill. And so many mountaineers, and pretty much all mountaineers, very much need to develop this. Now, muscular endurance means something quite different from person to person and sport to sport. For example, if you're talking to a regular gym goer who is just trying to get fit and strong, they might consider muscular endurance as doing 15 repetitions of a squat or any other exercise. And this is purely because it's much higher than their standard 8 to 10 repetitions that most people normally do. And this is endurance for them, simply being able to do 15 repetitions. Alternatively, a 1500 meter runner might consider muscular endurance as the ability of their legs to run fast and keep on producing force for about 6 minutes or 8 minutes or something around that. But as a mountaineer, these examples obviously aren't incredibly relevant because a mountaineer is way at the other end of the scale when it comes to duration and when it comes to length of their activity. Depending on what climb you're doing, muscular endurance could potentially mean 8 hours, 12 hours, even 20 hours of straight climbing up a steep incline. You know, there are extreme examples where this has to go for days on end, depending on what you're doing. And the issue here is because this type of endurance is such a world apart from most other sports and most research out there and most publications out there, the information on the subject isn't usually incredibly relevant for mountaineers. And if you go onto Google and you plug in muscular endurance training, you're not really going to get great results. If you plug in muscular endurance training for endurance sports, you're probably still not going to get great results. And pretty much the only quality source of info here, at least for the last 5-10 years, is the guys at Uphill Athlete, who, if you haven't heard of them before, they are genuinely the pioneers of strength and conditioning for mountaineers. And while I'm a huge fan of their work, there is always more to expand on, and there is always more to explore on every subject, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, typically, a mountaineer doing muscular endurance training will generally be familiar with a few different workouts which are very popular. Probably the most common, the most popular, and the most easily accessible for many people are loaded hill repeats, which involves finding a super steep hill or a relatively small mountain, loading up a heavy pack, and then just going up the hill, coming down the bottom and repeating. Now, this is obviously incredibly specific for the trail, incredibly specific for mountaineering. You can load up your pack quite a bit heavier, and you can do this pretty much. Most people have access to this in one way or another. And this is such an incredibly great workout for a mountaineer to apply. On top of this, the other real common ones are doing stair repeats, which is pretty much the same thing, going up and down a set of stairs, whether it's outdoors, whether it's in an apartment block, in an office tower, in a stadium, whatever. Or the other option is in a gym doing super high repetition work of a number of different exercises. So you might string together a circuit of, say, squats, deadlifts, step-ups, lunges, 20 repetitions of each, and do 3 or 4 rounds of the circuit. So you end up doing hundreds of repetitions on each leg, and it tends to be a pretty relatively effective way of developing muscular endurance. Now, all of these work very well, and at least 1 or 2 of these should be a staple at the tail end of pretty much everyone's preparations leading into a climb. So in the last 6, 8, 12, 16 weeks, depending on how long your preparation and how long your training plan is. But to genuinely get the most out of this type of training, you need to be doing some very particular things in the workouts. And so to help with this, here are 7 very simple rules to follow while you're doing muscular endurance training. So rule number 1 is don't train endurance before getting strong. Now, this is probably the single most common mistake I see from mountaineers when it comes to this type of training. They think, look, muscular endurance training is important and it's effective and it's beneficial and it makes me feel really, really good. If a little bit of it is good, that means lots of it should be good. So they end up doing muscular endurance training pretty much for their entire preparations. And let me tell you right now, this is a major mistake. If you are not strong enough and your legs don't have enough maximal strength, the benefits of muscular endurance training is going to be greatly reduced. On top of this, there is a relatively narrow window for improvement when it comes to muscular endurance training, meaning you can't train it for 6 months in a row and expect to continually improve. Generally, for my clients and the people I work with, I won't really do more than 12 weeks of muscular endurance training at the most, leading into someone's trip, just because you begin to see very much more diminishing returns after that point. Instead, if you can spend time developing your maximal strength, not only is that going to be so beneficial for a number of different other reasons, but specifically when it comes to your muscular endurance training, that's going to allow you to perform more and better at this type of training, reap a lot more benefits, and also improve that window of increase that window of improvement with this type of training. So generally for mountaineers, I'll recommend, look, in the beginnings of your preparation, go out and get strong, do heavy strength training, build up to some serious strength, and then transition into your muscular endurance training towards the tail end of your preparations, when you're bringing everything to a head, trying to get all that final stages of fitness very, very specific for the mountain. Now, the question you might be asking yourself here is, how strong is strong enough? When do I know whether to transition from strength training to muscular endurance training? And that honestly is a very, very tricky question to answer. And it is a super subjective thing. Because in typical sports, if you're coming out of strength and conditioning, you might have a specific 1RM target equal to the percentage of body weight which you're expected to hit before moving on to other types of training. For example, you might be expected to be able to squat twice your body weight, or deadlift 2.5 or 3 times your body weight, or something like that, before moving on to either muscular endurance training or before moving on to more specific and complex strength training, whatever it might be. But for mountaineers who typically don't have a huge history of strength training, who don't typically like to get under the bar doing heavy stuff, it isn't really this simple, and giving numbers is probably not incredibly relevant and incredibly effective. And in general, I don't really like generic one-size-fits-all answers. So for my clients in this situation, I really make a judgment call on an individual basis, depending on what their climb is, what their history is, what their training outcomes are really trying to work on are, and then we make a decision from there. Now, if you were tossing this up and you did want a bit of help deciding how to figure this out for yourself, shoot me an email at rowan@summitstrength.com.au, and I'm always more than happy to discuss this. We can have a chat about what you're doing and where you want to lead to. But if you are wanting to know a little bit more, do reach out to me, and I'm always happy to chat. So that's rule number 1, don't train endurance before getting strong. Rule number 2 is don't go too fast. Now, your muscular endurance training is not a race. This is training endurance. It's not training speed. So common mistakes people will make with this is when they're doing their hill or their stair repeats is they'll put on a reasonable amount of weight, but then they'll just zoom up the hill or zoom up the stairs as quick as they can. And if you're getting to the stage where you can literally just churn through and get yourself huffed and puffed and really power up, you're probably not going heavy enough, and you probably need to load a little bit extra weight into your pack. On top of that, if you're in the gym and you're doing your high rep work, I often see people just banging out squat after squat after squat, lunge after lunge after lunge. I personally very much like slowing things down for your muscular endurance work and trying to keep repetitions slow and controlled throughout, because just banging out lots and lots of repetitions, in my eyes, is an incredibly effective way of doing this. So it's not a race. Don't go too fast. You're trying to focus on load and tension and strain through the muscles as opposed to speed. Now, rule number 3 is progress every week. Now, just like any other type of training, progression is the key to your success. If you're just doing the same workout week after week after week and expecting to get better and to get stronger and develop your muscular endurance, you're really not going to be getting the results you want. Every single time you repeat a workout, you want to be progressing in one way or another. Now, if you're doing your hill repeats or stair repeats, the simple ways are either adding a little bit extra weight each week you do it or each time you do it, or adding a little extra climbing time. Super simple, but super effective. The same thing with your gym work, just making sure you add a little bit of weight or add some extra reps for the same amount of time or whatever you may be doing. Just make sure you're progressing every single week and don't let yourself sort of relax and take it easy and just sort of plateau, but keep on progressing. And that really, really is essential. The next rule number 4, is repeating a workout too many times. Now, this is something that I don't think mountaineers do incredibly well when it comes to this type of training, in the sense that the body gets used to certain workouts very, very quickly. And even if you are progressing a workout, I should say, with extra weight or extra time, week by week by week, there will come a point where you reach the point of diminishing returns, meaning you're not improving at such a rate that you were before. You're not continually getting better. You might be improving a little bit each time, but it's probably not as good as it could be. Now, I often see mountaineers doing these like hill intervals for 12 weeks at a time, and personally, I think that might just be a little bit too long. It probably does work, and you will keep on improving, but I would personally think you can get much better results by mixing it up a little bit. As a general recommendation, I would say you probably don't want to repeat the same workout more than 8 times in a row. So that means if you're doing these workouts twice a week, you would be switching up the type of workout every 4 weeks. If you're doing it once a week, you might be switching up every 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're doing a 12-week prep leading into something, a 12-week muscular endurance phase leading up into a mountain, you might do 6 weeks of stair intervals and then 6 weeks of hill intervals. You can just simply switch around between different types of muscular endurance training. But personally, and there is no evidence behind this that I'm aware of specifically for muscular endurance for mountaineers, because there's no research on this, but personally, I think you're probably shooting yourself in the foot if you repeat a workout too many times. So next rule is hit your recovery. Now, these workouts are draining. They do take a lot out of the body, and you need to be taking your recovery seriously. So after you finish these endurance, if you've just done hill intervals or stair intervals, make sure you get some active recovery. Make sure you get out, for 10, 15 minutes of gentle cycling or swimming. Make sure you do some foam rolling. Make sure you're hitting your nutrition and getting those carbs and protein after a workout and getting that rehydrating as quickly as you can. This stuff does take it out of you, and if you're not actively thinking about your recovery and making sure you're ticking off all these bases and necessary, you're probably not going to be getting as many benefits as you could. And all that hard work, you're probably not getting as many results and as strong results as you possibly could. So I highly, highly, highly recommend really think about your recovery. We're going to go a lot deeper in this subject further on in the podcast and dive into some specific recovery protocols. But for now, just think nutrition, hydration, sleep, and also active recovery. Rule number 6 is when you're doing muscular endurance work is you want to find your sweet spot, which is sort of building off rule number 2 of don't go too fast. Now, basically the sweet spot when it comes to muscular endurance work is you want to find a load which puts resistance through the muscles and gives you pretty much a muscle burn more or less straight away, but restricts you at going at a pace where you get out of breath. So the very perfect hill interval or stair interval is doing the very limit of weight that you can comfortably carry moving uphill, which keeps you at a pace where you can still maintain a conversation, meaning you're not getting huffed and puffed, and it limits you at a speed where you just cannot go too fast. That's the sweet spot, and it does take a little bit of patience to find. And usually in the first workout or two, you probably won't find it initially. 9 times out of 10 people undershoot how much weight they can do, and they just won't put in enough. For myself, the first few times I was doing this, or pretty much every time when I get into this and I have the first couple of workouts, I just probably spend half the workout figuring out my weights, putting rocks in on the trail, and trying to get it perfect, because it does take a little bit of playing around. So be patient with this. Don't think that you're going to hit it first time. And if you do feel like you're zooming ahead or you get into a pace where you're huffed and puffed, stop, put a bit of extra weight in, and make sure you find that sweet spot. The same thing for your work in the gym if you are doing it. If you're doing weights where you can zoom through and you're just sort of huffing and puffing the whole way through, maybe consider putting some extra weight on, which is going to slow you down, keep you at a pace where you can keep on breathing comfortably, maintain a conversation, and you might get some better results. And the final rule on this is specific is good, but practical is better. Now, before I said that, loaded hill repeats are probably the best thing a mountaineer can be doing. However, even though it's probably the best thing and the most specific thing, when it comes to your training, you want to be practical. You want to make it easy for yourself. And if you end up having to drive 45 minutes to find a right hill to do these intervals and 45 minutes each way, it's probably not really going to be as effective for you as opposed to finding a set of stairs which is in your apartment, which might not be quite perfect, but you can literally just walk out of your apartment and do them. Practical, in my opinion, is 99% of the time always better than trying to be perfect in your training. If something fits into your life better, do it. You're more likely to work harder. You're more likely to use that time for your best. And if you can cut out a whole bunch of travel time or a whole bunch of stress or whatever, that's going to be so much better for your just general well-being. So have a think about it. What is practical and what is easy to fit into your life? If it's hill intervals, great. If it's stair intervals, great. If it's just gym work, that's fine. Just do what is practical for you. And in my opinion, and on my expert opinion, after years and years of coaching people, I always say practical is better. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into how to get the best out of your muscular endurance work. As I said before, this is probably one of the most important aspects of fitness a mountaineer can develop, and it's one of the types of training that can really make you feel absolutely amazing after even just stringing a few weeks together of it. It's such a powerful thing for a mountaineer to master, and hopefully these 7 rules can really give you a bit of an extra advantage when it comes into these. So just to recap again, rule number 1, don't train endurance before getting strong. Number 2, don't go too fast. Number 3, make sure you progress every single week. Number 4, don't repeat a workout too many times. So I generally recommend 8 weeks or 8 repeats at a time. Hit your recovery, find the sweet spot between weight and speed, and specific is good, but practical is better. Apply that into your training, and I think you'll really enjoy the results. So before you go and before we wrap things up, hopefully I've made a point of just how important muscular endurance training is for a mountaineer. Now, if you were wanting a few more ideas around how to develop this type of training, and you were wanting a few specific workouts to help you with this, a little while ago I put together what's known as the Mountaineers Muscular Endurance Handbook. Now, inside here, I deliver 7 fantastic workouts that you can apply to develop muscular endurance in your legs, which are very specific for mountaineering. Now, this guide is completely free. You can download it at summitstrength.com.au/mountaineer-handbook. That's summitstrength.com.au/mountaineer-handbook. I'll drop that link down below in the show notes, but that will give you 7 free workouts on muscular endurance workouts specific for a mountaineer for you to apply into your training. So hopefully you got some great info from this episode today, guys. Very much hope you enjoyed it and very much hope you got a bit of value out of it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.